Hello. Is it on? Okay. I'm Katie O'Connor, a 2009 management senior. Our sponsors for this afternoon Impact speaker is Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship at Georgia Tech's Management College. Our live webcasting partner is Impact Media Solutions, and our media partner is 90.1 WABE Public Radio. We thank them for their support. Our guest today, Joey Asher, is president of SpeechWorks. SpeechWorks is a communication training company that coaches business people to connect with their listeners. They have coached a number of Fortune 500 companies, and they cater to a wide range of industries. President Asher himself has worked with a number of firms, including the Home Depot, the Weather Channel, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Before SpeechWorks, Mr. Asher started out as a journalist, then got a law degree from Emory Law, and worked at Troutman Sanders LLP. Afterwards, he became a professor at Emory Law. He has written 3 books, Communication Selling Skills for Lawyers, Even a Geek Can Speak, Low-Tech Presentation for High-Tech People, and his latest, How to Win a Pitch, the 5 Fundamentals That Will Distinguish You from the Competition, will be published in May. His presentation today is called How to Look and Sound Like a Leader. Please help me welcome our guest, Joey Asher.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is my microphone working well? Can y'all hear me in the back? You can hear me in the back? All right. Thank you, Katie. My understanding, Katie, is that Katie is a senior, and she is graduating in May, hopefully. What's that? December. In December. Okay, we won't ask about that. But you're graduating in December, and the hope is, with all this great Georgia Tech training, that you're going to go out into the workforce, and you're going to get a job, and you're going to be very successful. But, you know, having all the knowledge that you've gained here at Georgia Tech, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful school, but just having that knowledge by itself is not going to make you successful. You have to be able to articulate your ideas about that information. You have to be able to articulate articulate all that information in a way that connects with people. You have to be able to articulate those ideas in a way that makes people follow you. And that's what this program is about. That's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about how to look and sound like a leader. How do we stand up in front of the people that we work with, that we work for, that we want to maybe buy into our ideas? How do we get them to buy into us and follow us? That's what this program is about. It's how to look and sound like a leader. Before we get started, what I'd like to do is I'm going to divide the room in half. Okay, so we're going to sort of just sort of right here. So you guys in the middle, you'll have to sort of arbitrarily decide which half you're on. If you're on this side of the room, I want you to spend 30 seconds with the person beside you answering the following question. What are the risks of poor communication skills in the business world? Okay, so same thing. I'm only going to give you 30 seconds. I want you, everybody, with whoever you're seated next to, write down one thing. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to talk about this. I'm going to interrupt you. On this side of the room, what I'd like you guys to do is to talk about the following question. What are the problems you have organizing a message? Okay, problems organizing messages. I'm only going to give you 30 seconds to do this. Ready? Go. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me well? All right, time's up. Time's up. Time's up. All right, I want to on this side of the room, the question was risks. Let me hear you. Risks of poor communication skills. Somebody give me one risk. Anyway, raise your hand. Yes, sir. Tell me your name.
Greg Tavis.
Greg, okay. Give me one risk of poor communication skills. Speak really loud.
Misunderstanding or unclear goals.
Unclear goals, because you want your listeners to understand what you want to do, and if they don't understand what you want to do, what happens? What bad happens if the people you're working with don't understand your goals?
They don't produce what you want them to.
They don't produce what they want them to. Very good. Yes, sir. Speak up nice and loud. I'm sorry, you said there would be a fight? Oh, wow. Okay, a fight. Okay, very good. Yeah, no, that's true. A fight. Good. Yes?
Being passed up for promotion.
You could be passed up for a promotion. Okay. Yes, sir.
New ideas don't get proposed, new ideas aren't implemented, new and better ideas.
Very good. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to sort of buy into our ideas, and if you got an idea, you may have a wonderful idea, but if you can't communicate it to somebody, they're not going to buy into it. Give me one more from this side of the room. Yes, sir.
My name is Walter Boyd. You don't get funding when you need it.
Don't get funding. Now we're talking, okay? Now we're talking. As I finally get on the money issue, and yeah, you don't get the money you want, whether you're trying to make a sale, whether you're trying to get a budget approved, whatever it is. That's a risk of poor communication. On this side of the room, I'd like to, the question was, problems organizing a message. Somebody give me one problem organizing. Tell me your name. Yes, sir.
My name is Ryan. Matching your audience's expectations.
Okay, what he said was matching the audience's expectations. Just tell me a little bit more. What do you mean by that?
Well, if they're expecting you to speak in English and speaking French, it's not going to work.
Okay, no, that's a good point. I mean, Ryan's making the point is you got to find a way to connect with your listeners' expectations, and you know, if you're just speaking, if you're sort of not on the same page with your audience, it's not going to work. Yes, yes, sir.
Name's Ross Anderson. Having a clear meaning. If you hear it and you're just counting out words.
Ross said being clear. Being clear. Clarity is obviously very, very important. Very good. Anything else? Somebody else? Yes, sir.
Making it simple.
Simplifying. Why is simplifying particularly important? I think it's incredibly important, but why?
To get the idea across.
Yeah, think about this. Think about how important this idea of simplicity. Put yourself in the shoes of your listener and think about how hard it is to listen. Okay? I mean, think about how hard that is. You're sitting out there in the audience, sort of like you are today, and somebody is standing up here and he's got all his ideas, and you got to gather it all in on the fly. Okay? And so it is your job as the speaker to make it as simple as possible so that they can understand you and they can buy into your ideas and ultimately follow you. Give me one other problem. Yes, sir. You want it to be as short as possible. Isn't that right? Is that what you're saying? Why is that? I agree with you, but why?
People see a long message, they whether you're reading it, and they pass it over.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's ever complained that a presentation was too short, right? I mean, that's the idea. And so you always want to try and keep it as tight and as short as possible. These are all these things. We're going to talk about a lot of these things as we go forward today. But before we do, I want to give you sort of an overall sort of philosophical underpinning for what we think makes for great communication. And it's a story, really, that I think will illustrate what we think philosophically you have to think about if you want to be an effective communicator. A couple of years back, what we do is we go and we give workshops for our clients at their various offices. And we were up in Ashburn, Virginia, which is a very nice suburb. Anybody here know of Ashburn, Virginia? Raise your hand if you've heard of Ashburn, Virginia. It's a very nice suburb of Washington, D.C. It's kind of like Alpharetta, if you're familiar with Alpharetta. Nice rolling hills, very pretty. And we were looking for our clients' offices, and we were lost. We were really lost. In fact, we were in a rental car, and we were down this dirt road, and we come to this beat-up old wooden bridge. And the bridge has this sign, and the sign says, weight limit 10 tons. How many of you have seen a sign like this before? Okay, it's the weight limit sign, okay? And we'd seen this sign. And I don't know, when I was a kid, I feel like I'd seen these signs a lot. But now I don't feel like I've seen that many of them lately. And so I was just kind of curious, and so I go on the internet later in the week, and I Google bridges with weight limits. I was just curious. That's what I was finding. Yeah, it's very interesting. You know that every year dozens of bridges collapse because truckers, they come to the bridge, they see the sign, they know they're in a 15 or a 20-ton rig, and they just go. They go anyway. They figure they can make it. They do their own little engineering analysis on the fly from the seat of the cab of the truck, and they figure they can make it. And I'm assuming many times they cannot make it, but I mean, many times they can make it, but a lot of times the bridge will collapse. Now, what does this have to do with spoken communication? What does this have to do with standing up in front of people and speaking in a way that leads them? I think you have to, if you want to be good at this, you have to think about the nature of the medium that we're working with. Right? The medium is I make words with my mouth, and I send them through the air, and somebody catches them with his or her ears, and then they figure them all out. That's the medium. The medium that we're talking about, it's a bridge with a weight limit. This is a limited medium. And the people that are good at this, they recognize the limits of the medium. They realize that, you know what, I can't do everything that I want to do necessarily with this medium. So I'm going to work within the limits. I'm going to think about, well, what does the medium do well, and what does it not do well? Well, you know what the medium does not do well? It doesn't do lots and lots of data well. This is not a great medium for transmitting lots and lots of information. If I were to stand up in front of you guys today and say, I want to really make sure you remember, and then come out with, piece of data after piece of data, data, and I'm trying to get all this, I wouldn't be very successful. It's not a great medium, but it is a good medium for certain things. It's a great medium for getting a few points across. If you want to just get 2 or 3 main ideas across, it's a good medium for that. It's a good medium for telling stories. It's a great story. This medium is a great storytelling medium. It's great for stories. It's also a great medium for conveying how you feel. Okay? I can't necessarily, in a memo, always convey how I feel, but I can convey a sense of intensity about how important it is that you invest in this idea. Okay? That's what I can do. So I can convey that with my voice, my face, my eyes, my body. I can convey the sense of intensity. And so, if you want to write something down, and you don't have to write anything down, okay? But if you want to write something down, as to a basic communication philosophy, what I would have you write down is this. Spoken communication, it's about connection, not about perfection. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect with our listeners and move them somewhere. We're not trying to be perfect. We're not trying to tell them every single thing that's in our head. So that's sort of the fundamental idea. And so what I want to talk about is some ideas that are going to help you connect with people, but not necessarily be perfect. I'm not going to necessarily show you how to get every single idea in your head to stick, but I am going to talk to you about how do we connect with people and influence them, because that's what we want to do. And there are 3 main ideas here. There are 3 main ideas. Number 1, organization. We're going to talk about how do we organize our thoughts. That's the first thing. The second thing, and what we say is organize your ideas into 3 listener-centered points. That's number 1. Number 2, you have to present in a style that connects. And finally, if you want to be good at this, you have to practice like crazy. Organize into 3 listener-centered points, present in a style that connects, and number 3, practice like crazy. That's what we're going to be talking about. So, the first thing is, well, organize into 3 listener-centered points. Anybody got a favorite TV show? Raise your hand if you got a favorite TV show. Anybody? Yes, sir. What is it?
South Park.
South Park. Okay, very good. Very good. Politically incorrect. I love it. Okay, very good. Yes? Entourage. Good. Anybody else? 24. Oh, okay. I don't watch 24. I used to, but it was, it's like visual crack. I just can't do it. It's just like one hit and you're done, But it's a great, I do like, yes, sir? Lost, okay, very good. What's your name? Brad. And you're a Lost guy? I mean, you're into Lost, okay. And when the show, I mean, are you like a religious Lost guy? I mean, you're not going to miss it. Yeah, okay. He's like, where is this going? I want you to imagine, are you like me? If you got your favorite, my show is The Office. Anybody here Office fans? Okay. I just don't miss the show. I just won't miss The Office. If the show is coming on, I'm yelling at my kids, leave me alone, I'm about to watch my show. I don't care about your homework, I don't care about anything. Leave me alone. Do you have that level of intensity? You do, okay. Now I want you to imagine the following scenario. You're seated in a lecture hall or maybe in a meeting, and somebody is about to deliver to you a typical sort of business-focused presentation. How would you compare your level of excitement and intensity relative to a really heavily hyped episode of Lost? Would you say it was more or less? Just be honest. Tell me the truth.
Probably a lot less.
Less, okay. Why is that? Why? What's that? Because typically they're not good. Okay, typically they're not good. You have this expectation. Why not? The reason I bring you through this, and I think most people feel this way, it's not always true, by the way. Sometimes presentations are very exciting, but it's usually not the case. The reason I tell you this is because when you're creating your presentation, you have to remember that the people who are about to listen to you typically aren't that excited about it. Okay, they're typically not really looking forward to hearing it. Doesn't mean that you can't be good. But their expectations built up over a long period of time is that most presentations aren't any good. Not only that, but they're used to being really excited by things like Lost and 24 and all this kind of thing. So you have to have an approach that's going to grab them from the beginning and hold their attention. And that's what this is about. This is what this formula that you see up here is about. It's based on an old idea. It's based on the idea that any presentation should have three parts. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You should tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Okay? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Special extra bonus brownie points for whoever in here can tell me the single individual that invented this idea that you have to tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. Who wants to go for the brownie points? Yes, sir. What's that? Dale Carnegie? I'm sorry, you are incorrect. Who else? Come on, can you take a crack? Yes, sir. Henry Ford? No, nope, that's not it. You got to go back farther than that. The guy's been dead a long time. Okay, the guy's been dead. You got to think really, really dead. By the way, I would think. I'll give you a hint. For all you mathematicians, engineer, Georgia Tech types should be thinking about this. I'm going to guess my hint. That's my hint. Who wants to take a crack at that? Yes, sir. Oh gosh, that's really wrong. That's not even close. All right, I'm going to give you another hint. Where was the modern mathematics as we think of it today was invented in ancient Greece. Somebody said ancient Greece, I hope. Okay? So you're very close. Who said Aristotle? You did? That's wrong, but it's very close. Socrates, very good. Jeez, okay. Very good. Okay, I'm not sure if we should give you... Should we give him the brownie points or... Sure. I don't think so. All right. Okay, Socrates. I think it's interesting. In addition to inventing mathematics, they also were really into rhetoric. And all the smartest people in ancient Greece, they studied rhetoric. You know, Socrates, Aristotle, they were big into rhetoric. Nowadays, do they have rhetoric at the Georgia Tech campus? Do they offer it? Is it something you can take? Do they offer rhetoric? I don't know. Okay. But I just think it's interesting. In those days, that was the highest form of scholarship. That was one of the highest forms of scholarship. But today, nobody studies it. Okay. So let me go through this, and we'll give you a sense of how this works. You start with a hook, something that is going to grab their attention at the beginning. Then you come up with something we call a message objective. That's sort of your single one-sentence, what's it all about statement. And then you have 3 points. This is very important, this 3 points idea, and I want to spend a moment or two talking about that. Why is it that we have 3 points? Anybody? Raise your hand. Why is it we say keep it to 3 points? Anybody? People aren't going to remember more than 3 points. Let's see. Okay, you won the Socrates prize. Tell me your name again.
Greg Cabot.
Okay, this is your brownie point prize. It's Greg?
Yeah.
Okay, Greg. Let's say, Greg, that you're about to give a presentation to, let's say, 25 people.
Okay.
What kind of, you're undergrad?
Yeah.
And if you could have any job in the world, once you get out of here, what would it be?
That's a good question. I really want to work for Nike.
Okay, so let's say you're working for Nike, all right, and the head of Nike is it still Phil Knight? Is he still the... Okay, so let's say you're going to the head of the sneaker committee for Nike, okay, and you've got this neat sneaker that you've invented, all right, and you've got 20 minutes, and I come to you, and I say to you, all right, here is a satchel with $300,000 cash. You can have this money. It is yours. You can take it home. You can spend it. You can buy a boat. You can take a trip, you can buy a house, you can do whatever you want. If, when you're done, I'm going to go up to 3 people that heard you speak, and I'm going to say, you just heard him speak? What were his 3 core messages? If they can repeat back to me the 3 core messages, and everybody says it about the same, I'm going to speak to 3 people. If they can all repeat back to me those 3 core messages, you get $300,000 cash. What are you going to do? All you got to do is to get them to repeat back to me the 3 core messages. What are you going to do?
Repeat them. No, I mean, not like executive, but tell them.
You're going to pound away at those messages, right?
Yeah.
He said, you couldn't hear him, but he said, repeat them. I'm going to repeat them. How many times are you going to repeat them? 3 times, really? Okay, you got $300,000 at stake. You're going to say them 3 times?
Well, I mean, you gotta,
No.
you gotta present them.
I mean, I got $300,000 at stake. How many times are you going to...
Stand up there and say the 3 points over and over.
Why not? All you got to do is to get $300,000.
It's not a good presentation.
Whoa,
If I'm
so
trying to
soon.
sell a sneaker, it's not a good presentation.
Okay, well, you may be right about that. Okay, good. Good, thank you. Stick by your guns. But you're going to pound away at those messages, aren't you? You're going to keep coming back to them in different ways. Yeah, very good. That's exactly right. I think this is a fundamental test of a presentation. I really do. I think that if you go in to speak to, your boss or the senior management committee of your organization or just the class that you're speaking to, trying to get your class to remember some ideas, if you can't get them to remember 3 points, you lose. You fail. You get a 0 on the test. You shouldn't have come. You've wasted. What are we trying to do? We're trying to get people to remember some ideas. My 3 points are organize into 3 listener-centered points, present in a style that connects, practice like crazy. I don't know how many times I've said it so far, but I've said it at least 3. I know that. Because I want you to remember it. Tell me your name. No, right here. Marcel. Marcel made the point that it was about being simple. This idea of simplicity. Simplicity is an incredibly important part of this. There is a wonderful book by a guy named John Maeda, M-A-E-D-A. Professor Maeda wrote the book when he was a professor of design at MIT. Now he is, I believe, I think he runs the Rhode Island School of Design. Does anybody know that? Anybody know that for sure? But I think he is sort of like the headmaster or whatever the senior position at Rhode Island School of Design. He wrote this book called Simplicity. It's a great little book. John Maeda. It's actually called The Laws of Simplicity. And he lays out the 10 laws of simplicity. And I love the first law. The first law, here's the entire law, the entire first law of simplicity. Reduce. Don't you love that? I love that. Reduce. That's the whole law. Reduce. In other words, the idea, if you want to make something simple, reduce it. And one of the simplest, best things that you can do to put together great presentations is to ask yourself the following question. In my presentation, if they can only remember 3 things, what are the 3 things I really want them to remember? What are the 3 things I really want them to remember? And I will tell you that by itself is going to make your presentations 10 times better, because the vast majority of presentations can't pass that simple test. They cannot pass what I would call the $300,000 challenge. They can't do it because you'll ask people, you try this on the next presentation, next big presentation you go here, or you're hearing somebody speak, or even next time you hear one of your professors speak. Ask somebody who you don't know, go up to him and ask, what were his 3 key messages, or what were her 4 key messages, 3 key messages. Here's what they're going to say. Especially if they're going to say, oh, well, they made some good points. That's it. Oh, yeah, she's a good speaker. But what were the key messages? What are the 3 key messages? That's what you want to be thinking about. So then the body of your presentation, you bring them to life with evidence. And the most important type of evidence that you want to be using is stories. Why is it that you want to be telling stories? Yes, sir. Say it again.
They're memorable.
Yeah.
It makes your point easy to remember. You can associate a story with it.
That's exactly right. People like them. They're memorable. People love stories. You want to be telling as many. Think about all the best presentations you've ever heard. Think about all the best presentations you've ever heard. The best presentations are ones where people are telling you stories. And the number one thing, one of the easiest things we tell people that they can do is to make their presentations much, much better is to tell some stories, So you always want to make sure that you're telling stories in your presentations. Then what you do once you bring each point to life with a point or a story or a piece of evidence, then you recap, you restate your message objective and your 3 points. You said it once, you say it again, you say it a third time, why? You want to make them remember. That's exactly right. And at the end, you have a call to, the wrap is what we would call, that's a call to action. You want people to remember, you want them to do something. You know, we stand up and we give presentations because we're trying to influence people. Remember, this is how to look and sound like a leader, and this is a workshop in leadership. This is a program in leadership and entrepreneurship. And what is leadership? Leadership is, well, what is leadership? Have y'all talked about that? What is leadership? What's that? There you go, gold star. That's exactly right. Influence. Well, in other words, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get people to do something. You're trying to get people to think a certain way or move in a certain direction. Well, what you want to do at the very end is you want to tell them what you want. Think of it this way. When I was practicing law, here's what would happen. I'd bring a lawsuit. And, tell me your name. Carolyn. Okay. So I'd bring a lawsuit against Carolyn. And I would say, Carolyn has damaged me, and she, and I would go in front of the judge, and I would make all the arguments as to why she would damage me. And she would countersue, and she would bring a lawsuit back and say, Joey's damaged me, she'd make all of her arguments. At the very end, the judge would, having heard all the arguments, would say, okay, so what do you want? You have to ask for, what we would say in law school is, and when we were practicing law, is you have to ask for the relief desired. And so I wouldn't just stop and say, Judge, she's damaged me, make her pay. I would say, Judge, she's damaged me, I want her to pay me $500. You ask for the relief that you want. Because people have heard all the information, but, well, now what do? They want to know what to do. This is about leadership. This is about, say it loud, influence. That's exactly right. It's about influence. So you want to ask for the relief you want. Ask for something specific. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask for what? What do you think I'm going to ask for? What do you think I'm going to ask for at the end? In fact, I'm going to ask for whatever you tell me I should ask for. What do you think I should ask for? No, that's not what I'm going to ask for. See, I went back down. What do you think I'm going to ask for?
I'm thinking for us to be a better teacher.
Yeah, I'm going to say use the ideas. I want you to buy in and use these ideas. You may not buy in, but I want you to. And so that's why I'm trying to influence the way you think. That's the influence piece. Very good. Now, I want to talk about the hook real quick, and then we're going to play a quick game, then we're going to shift gears. The hook is a promise. To grab people at the beginning, you make a promise. And the promise is that you're going to solve a big problem that they have. How many of y'all have seen the television program Law and Order? Raise your hand if you've ever seen that show, Law and Order. Anybody here a big fan of Law and Order? Because I'm kind of a fan. And the first scene, don't you love? I love the first scene of Law and Order because it's always kind of the same scene. There's two kids and they're playing Frisbee, right? Right? They're playing Frisbee, right? And you're just like, oh, their guys are playing Frisbee. I know it's coming up. And the Frisbee goes behind a dumpster, right? Am I right? And then they go behind the dumpster and what do they see? There's a corpse, right? Yeah, there's a corpse. Here it is. There it is. Okay, we have corpse. We're ready to go. And you think about what that corpse stands for. The corpse is a promise. It really is. It's a promise. It's a promise to the viewers that by the time the show is over, we will have resolved all problems related to the corpse. We'll resolve all the issues. And what are the issues that are related to the corpse? Who killed him? How did he die? What else?
Why did they die?
Why did they die? And is the sorry so-and-so going to go to jail? Right? They're going to resolve that issue too. All of the issues are, well, it's the same thing here. A good hook lays in front of the audience a problem that they care about. So if you're trying to sell the management committee at Nike on why they should invest in a new type of sneaker, what is the big business problem that the people at Nike have? They got only one. There's only one. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. There you go. That's it. That's the only problem that they have at Nike. marketing is important, but there's only one problem. And the problem is, how do I make more money and grow shareholder value? That's exactly right. And so what you need to do is, depending on the circumstance, if you're trying to get them to buy into the new sneaker, you need to sort of start by saying, you know, right now, sales are down. And we got a problem. We're not making as many sales. We're not selling as many sneakers as we want. But I have a solution. You know, the super duper Air, whatever, sneaker from Nike. Okay, what you do is you say there's a big problem. That's sort of the corpse, as it were. That's the problem. And then you offer a solution. And that's your presentation. Problem, and then the rest of the presentation is your solution to the problem. Does that make sense? Now I want to play a quick game. You're going to need a pencil and a piece of paper, and then we're going to shift gears. You're going to need a pencil and a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a list. I'm going to put up a list of 20 words. I'm going to put up a list of 20 words, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the 20 words, and I want you to memorize them in order. And then when I'm done, I will take the list down, and then you pick up your pens at that point and write them all down from memory. So I want you to put your pens down, put your pens or pencils down, and I'm going to put up a list of 20 words. I'm going to read through them, and I want you to memorize them in order. So here we go. Worm, hat, phone, jar, table, bat, tiger, light, mat, door, plane, chair, heart, pencil, paper, staple, ring, tree, cloud, roof. Write them down in order as best you can. You done already? Wow. Okay. Make a note of how many you got right. Just make a note. I know it was hard. It was intended to be hard. It was intended to be hard. All right, so we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. Just make a note of how many you got right. We're going to do it again, but we're going to do it a little different approach the second time. Okay, so put your pencils down. Here we go. Pencils down. The first word is wallpaper. I want you to imagine on the wall there is this gorgeous wallpaper. And the wallpaper has on it this painting of this beautiful snow-capped mountain. And then you take a skirt and you pull the skirt around the base of the mountain. And you take a piece of string and you pull the string around the base of the skirt so that it forms a cone. You take a pair of scissors, and with the scissors you cut off the base of the cone. The scissors, you take the scissors, you hang the scissors on a nail. Now also hanging on that nail, there is this beautiful gold, diamond-encrusted Rolex watch. And along comes a nurse, and the nurse, she takes that watch and she puts it on her wrist. Now the nurse is wearing a horrible smelling perfume. Now I want you to imagine that the perfume kind of smells like an elephant. The elephant, if you can imagine this, is crammed into this little jail. On the wall of the jail, there's this great big mirror. The mirror falls off the wall and lands on top of a suitcase. The suitcase opens up, and out comes this beautiful flowering plant. The plant falls over and spreads dirt all over the wall. At the base of the wall is a safe. The safe opens up, and out comes a melon. Along comes this little white dog. The dog bites the melon. The dog is wearing a beautiful pearl necklace. The key to doing well at this game is to remember that first word. So, see how many you can get in a row, in order. Raise your hand if you did better the second time. Okay. Anybody get them all? Anybody get them all? Okay, so we had a handful of people get them all. And what is the point of this exercise? Anybody? Tell me a story. Remember, you want people to you want things to stick in people's heads. So tell them a story if they're going to help them remember it. The moral of this story is tell a story. Okay. Bottom line here, when you're creating a presentation, the way I would have you do it is the most important thing is start with your hook, decide what is the big problem that you're solving for your listeners, and outline that. And then detail what is your three-point plan to help them with that problem. And then tell a few stories that illustrate your 3 points. Recap your 3 points, and then have a call to action at the end. Ask them for something. Ask your listeners for something at the very end. That's the idea here. Now, I want to shift gears because I want to talk about the second major point. And I'll talk about this quickly, and then we'll open it up and then talk about practice quickly, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I want to talk about style. My first point, if you may remember, was organize your ideas into 3 listener-centered points. My second point is present in a style that connects. And when we talk about style, I like to start with a study that was done by a fellow named Albert Mehrabian. Dr. Mehrabian was a researcher, a social scientist at UCLA. And he studied the way that we communicate. He found out something that is very interesting. He found out that 55% of the impression that we make when we communicate, 55% is based on something he called physical presence. What is presence? Somebody tell me what physical presence is. Yes, sir. Yeah, body language is part of it. Yes, sir. Yeah, energy in what sense? Well, he's specifically talking about physical things, so it could be physical energy. Yeah, okay. Yes, sir. Okay, so yeah, so that's 55% is based on sort of how you look. It's gestures, movement, facial energy, eye contact. These are all parts of physical presence. 38% of the impression that we make, according to Dr. Mehrabian, is based on how we sound. Do we sound like we mean it? Do we sound passionate? And then the last 7% is what? What's that? The words. The words, yeah. That's 7% of the impression that you make, according to Dr. Mehrabian, is how you sound. Now, you know, I don't know. This is a study that's been around in my business for a long time, and I don't know how much authority to put on it. But here's what I will say about it. Whether you believe it's 7% or 20% or whatever, we do know this. The people judge us based on how we look and how we sound. You may have the greatest information in the world and the greatest ideas in the world, but if you don't sell it with your body and your face and your voice, it's not going to come across in the same way. And so that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. Did I put that? Oh, there it is. All right. And so when we talk about these things, we really break it down to presence and voice energy. First, we talk about boots and spurs. We carry yourself with your boots and spurs, not your bedroom slippers. The next is don't stand there like a tree. What that means is that goes to gestures and movement. Next is eye contact and facial energy. We want you to be animated in your eyes. We want you to make good eye contact. And the last two is vocal energy. This is just energy in your voice. And the last one is what? Anybody want to take a guess at the last one? It's not Clemson. Who said that? Pause. Very good. Nice job. Yeah, it's pause. We want you to pause. Pausing is good. So we want you to pause once in a while. Let's talk about a few of these things. Let's just start with how you stand. I'd like everybody in the room to stand up. All right, I want you to put your, let me stand up here so you can see me. All right, hands hanging down, straight down at your sides, just like a bunch of bananas. Feet about shoulder width apart. All right, stand just like this. All right, very good. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take a quarter step forward with one foot and just sort of feel the weight on the balls of your feet. All right, and I want you to turn to the person beside you and I want you to say, "You look good." All right. All right. Very good. All right, everybody sit down. Everybody sit down. What I just had you do was I had you in what I call the neutral stance. This is what we call the neutral stance. All things being equal, we want you to just have your hands hanging straight down, just like this. We don't want your hands like this. We call this the fig leaf position. We don't want you in the fig leaf position, okay? We don't want you in the pretzel position. We don't want you in, I don't know, what do we call this position? The praying position. We don't want this in the praying position. We don't want any of those things. We want your hands just hanging straight line like this because it's all about being open and being connected. This is, we feel like, hands down, this is more connected than this. What does this say? Yeah, it's hiding, it's defensive, all that kind of stuff. So we want you open. It's all about being open and connected. That's the idea. So the next is boots and spurs. We want you to come. This is very important. I want to spend a little bit of time on this, and we'll talk about vocal energy. We'll talk a little bit about practice. We're going to open up for Q&A. Boots and spurs is very important. Well, what this is that it's the idea is that you need to come in front of your audience wearing your boots and spurs, not your bedroom slippers. The idea here is that so many people start their presentations by walking up in front of their audience, and everything about the way they walk and they look conveys the following idea. I hate being here, okay? Right? It conveys that sense, right? It's like, this is not good. This is not good. This says that you're not liking this, okay? You want to convey the sense of that you're excited, the sense that you're excited to be with everybody. So you walk in with a spring in your step, and you pause, and you take a step forward, and you tell them something about yourself. You walk in with some energy. I need a volunteer. I need a volunteer. Come on up. Tell me your name again.
I'm AJ.
AJ, okay. AJ, stand right there. All right, AJ, what I want you to do, I want you to walk in with your boots and spurs, and that means having a spring in your step. Connect with that audience. All right, not yet. Wait. Okay. Walk in with a spring in your step. Pause, and with total commitment, I want you to tell us very briefly what you had for breakfast. Are you ready? Go. All right, very good. Very good. Nice job. Wait. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. How did you do? How did you do? You didn't pause, okay. All right, give him some feedback. What's that? He went to the fig leaf position? Okay, dude. You're getting some serious feedback here. All right? But very nice job. Yeah, maybe just be a little bit more open, a little more spring in that step, but nice job. Nice job. All right. Nice job. All right. Yeah, this is a big deal. The way you come in at the beginning says a lot. I'm dating myself. How many of you guys saw the original? You guys have all seen the original Star Wars, right? Everybody's seen it? No? Okay. But the first, you remember the music at the beginning of Star Wars? What does it go? How does it go? Dun, da, da, just like that. Dun, da, da. And what does that music say to you about the movie? It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, right? Well, if you walk in, think of the walk-in as your overture. Okay, that's your overture. If you walk in looking like a schlub, technical term, okay? If you walk in looking like a schlub, well, then what? That's your overture. Oh, what does that say? This isn't going to be good. If you walk in with a lot of energy, that says, oh, okay, everybody's going to sit up and take notice. Right? It's an important thing. It's an important thing. You want to convey a sense of confidence and optimism. I want to talk a little bit about vocal energy because I think this is particularly important. The idea here is you need to speak with intensity and with passion. Okay? You want to speak with intensity and passion is the idea here. You want to convey the sense that you're excited about your ideas. And you need to imagine the following scenario, that you're having dinner with a close friend and you're talking about something you're really excited about. That's the way you need to be talking when you're speaking to larger groups and when you're trying to influence people. There needs to be this sense of intensity that you really care about it. And they need to hear it, they need to hear it in your voice. How many of you guys have ever seen, I'm taking a risk here, the ShamWow guy? All right, you guys know who the ShamWow guy is? Okay, who's the ShamWow? What's your name? Jenny, who's the ShamWow guy? And how would you characterize the ShamWow? If you haven't seen the ShamWow guy, he is this guy who is on network. He's on television, and he's selling this this ShamWow thing. And it's like a sponge. It's a chamois. Okay, it's a chamois. Okay, yeah, we have some real ShamWow experts right here. Okay, yeah. But I mean, does anybody here have a ShamWow? He's got a ShamWow. You're the one. You bought one. Oh, your house shares one. Okay, but I mean, it's this. But the nature of this guy is what? He's really jazzed about the ShamWow. Okay, and that's a sort of a stand. I'm not saying you need to be like the ShamWow guy, but you need to be energized, because if you get excited about your ideas, it's going to make other people excited. They know. You know, we did one of our clients early on was the Home Shopping Network, and we had a guy who was one of the early developers at the Home Shopping Network. You guys have all seen the Home Shopping Network, right? All right, the Home Shopping Network, they know that if somebody gets up there and gets really excited, they measure, they have a way of measuring the intensity in the voice, and they see a direct correlation between the intensity of the voice and the amount of times the phone starts to ring. They can make the phone ring by getting more intense with the voice. That is the idea. So that's what I want you to do. Be intense, be excited. The last major point, and I want to open it up for some questions, is very simple. I'm not going to say that much about it, but if you want to be good at this, you have to practice. You have to rehearse. The people that are good at this, they practice a lot. You know, people see, you know, right now everybody looks at Barack Obama, and he is a wonderful speaker. But he has a lot of natural gifts, I'm sure. But I can tell you this, he practices a lot. A lot. The people that are good at this practice over and over again. They practice saying it out loud. They practice saying it out loud. So, my most important, again, I want to hit my 3 points. Organize into 3 listener-centered points. Present in a style that connects. Practice like crazy. We have some time for questions still? Okay, so I want to open up. Any questions on anything? Oh, thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir. When did I realize I had a talent for this? I was a pretty good speaker in high school, but I didn't. You know, I did it. When I was a newspaper reporter, I didn't really do any of this. When I was practicing law, I did a little bit of it. But it was really the way this business started. This business was founded actually by my mother, Spring Asher, who is a teacher, a professor here in the business school. And those of you who are in the getting an MBA will, I believe, they have to, am I right, Terry? They have to take the SpeechWorks, or at least a version of our class. And so I sort of left the practice of law, and I came and I worked for my mom. And then she sort of, whipped me into shape. You whipped me into shape. Yes, sir?
Why do you reference the ShamWow guy versus Billy Mays?
Oh, ShamWow. Billy Mays would be a good reference as well. Billy Mays is a good reference as well. I'm not telling you should be like those guys in terms of that over-the-top energy, but the point is that energy is important. And those guys realize that. Yes, sir. Somebody right here. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You mentioned Barack Obama,
Yeah.
but also there was Hillary Clinton, who I think was very well practiced and has a lot of natural ability. However, in the media, they portrayed her as somewhat negatively on her speeches. So what advice would you give Hillary Clinton in terms of presentations and speech giving that might have changed things?
I think Hillary needs to be much better on the teleprompter than Barack. I mean, Barack Obama is wonderful on the teleprompter, and Hillary is not good on the teleprompter. She's a wonderful speaker, and I've heard her, when I was a newspaper reporter up in New York, I had the chance to actually hear her speak. But when she's speaking off script and she's not carefully scripted, she's wonderful. But when she's on teleprompter, she's very stiff, as a lot of people are. Barack Obama is unusually gifted with the teleprompter.
Yeah. If you are communicating through a telephone, that 55% of physical presence goes off. So what do you suggest in a telephonic interview or anything of that sort? What
So the
exactly
question
matters?
is, if the question is, if I understand it, is to make sure, what about the telephone? If the 55% goes out the door, 55% goes out the door on the telephone, what do you do, how do you connect better on the telephone? That just it emphasizes the importance of the voice. You need to be really energized on the phone, especially because you're trying to send your energy, through technology. And, I don't have to tell you about this, but, in technology, there's this engineering idea of line loss, right? You guys are familiar with line loss, that the energy actually fades as it goes through the technology. And so you have to give even more energy through the telephone. Am I allowed to just pick? Okay, go ahead.
How would you,
Speak good and loud.
basically, what is the correlation between humor and good communication?
Humor?
Yeah.
The question is, what is the correlation between humor and good communication? I think it's great to try and be funny under the following circumstance. Okay, this is very technical, so you're going to have to pay very close attention. You can try to be funny if you're funny. Okay? I mean, I hate to be so glib about it. In general, we tell people not to start with a joke, though. We think the best thing to do if you want to be funny is to poke fun at yourself. Poke fun at yourself, but not to try and make fun of other people or to say anything that might be construed as as an offensive joke or anything like that. You got to be careful about humor. I think it's fine to be funny, but the safest thing is always to make fun of yourself. Make fun of yourself. Yes, sir.
One of the biggest problems for new speakers, if you will, is nerves.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to help people deal with nerves?
Yeah. The question is, what about anxiety? How do you overcome stage fright? What do you do to deal with nerves? The single most important thing you can do to deal with nerves is rehearse. If the people that are overcome their nerves, you need to practice over and over again. If you're really, really nervous, and by the way, how many of you do get nervous when you stand up to speak? Raise your hand. I've got my hand in the air because I get nervous. The people that are good at this, they practice. You have to rehearse. That's the single most important thing. The next most important thing is just seek lots of opportunities to speak. Those are the two things that you can do the most. Yes, sir.
Talking about leadership, how easy or difficult is it for a young person to influence others? Like, for example, if you are in a particular position at a higher authority or you have been there and done that, is it much easier to influence people than somebody who is inexperienced and never been there before?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, well, what about if you're young, how do you influence people that are older than you, right? And I can see how that would, is that what you're getting at? And when, a lot of people, you're all here are young. It is definitely harder, okay? It is definitely harder. There is an additional level of credibility that speakers have in somebody that's older and has a little more experience. However, that doesn't mean that you cannot be an effective and very influential person, but you have to follow, you have to sort of be even much more sort of fastidious about executing the fundamentals that we've been talking about here. Making sure that your message is very focused on your listeners' needs, keeping it just to a few points, speaking with passion, and practicing. You do those things, you're going to do everything you can to rehearse. You're going to do everything you can to influence despite your age. Yes, sir.
Would you recommend to always involve the audience in your presentations?
I think you should always, the question is, should you involve the audience? I think as much as you can. You always want to try and get the audience involved. At the very least, giving them opportunities, lots of opportunity to ask questions. That's always a good thing. Yes, so you speak good and loud.
Other than practicing, do you have any recommendations to remove bad habits of saying or like when
The question has to do with filler words like and like and The most important thing to deal with filler words, yes, you can practice, but the thing about filler words is people usually don't even know they're saying them. Okay, and so what you need to do is you need to be aware of them. And so what we tell people to do is put a rubber band around your wrist. As sort of it's almost like a string around your finger. And that'll sort of make sure that you're aware of those words. And then as soon as you think you're about to say a filler word, pause. Just close your lips and just sort of let it pass, as it were, okay? That's the idea, all right? Yes?
You said something at the beginning. Spoken communication is about
Connection, not perfection. Very good, yes. There will be a test.
You've had experiences in like a courtroom setting, and a business setting, how different are they speaking in front of like a jury and judge as opposed to speaking in front of business people?
Well, I've had a very limited amount of experience in a courtroom. Very limited amount of experience in a courtroom. And I don't even want to tell you about the one time I was in a courtroom. Let's just put it this way. I really learned that that public speaking, teaching was a good profession for me. All right? I didn't do so well when I was in court. I had a few experiences, but not too many.
You talked a lot about rehearsing and practice, but how much should we memorize when going into a presentation? Should we memorize an entire speech or just bits of it?
The question is, should you memorize your speech? The answer is absolutely not. You do not want to memorize your speech because it's going to make you seem stiff. All right? But you do want to practice it. You want to practice saying it over and over again. It's okay if you don't say it the exact way every time, but you do want to make sure that you hit your main points, and just rehearse it enough so that you feel like you can say it in a nice, fluid way. But it's important to rehearse a lot. Yes, sir?
About the walking around like you do, and not you specifically, but sometimes it seems a distraction or a mannerism of the speaker.
Okay.
What are the pros and cons?
The question has to do with walking around. We think it's always good to move around to some extent. I mean, what we always tell people to do is you don't want to, if you can get away with it, just stand behind the lectern, okay? Because this is a big barrier, and it's always about just connecting with the listeners. It's always about connecting with your audience. So we think you should try and move around as much as possible. Now, if you're doing something that's distracting, when I was in law school, I had a professor who, this was it. Back and forth. Pacing, back and forth, just like that. And it was really, annoying. And so you don't want to do that. Yeah, move around but make it sort of random. And what we also say is move to a point and then stop and sort of connect with people as opposed to just sort of walking randomly. Yes, sir?
If you're in a really small space that doesn't allow that, I guess you can just kind of shift your weight and move your shoulders, I guess.
You're talking about like in a...
Like if you're in a type of situation where all you got is the podium.
Oh, yeah, and sometimes that will happen. Sometimes they're not going to allow you to stay away. What we'll always do is, look, if you can, sometimes, they don't have a lapel mic, and so you have to stand, but we'll say stand here. Let them see you, okay? You always want to try and get out in front of the audience so they can see you so you can connect better. Yes, sir?
A question about the Q&A here at the end. A lot of times when someone asks a question, you rephrase the question and say the question is, or I think you were saying this. Is that important to, why do you do that?
Well, the reason I'm doing that, the question was, why do I rephrase the question? The reason I'm doing it is really because I want to make sure everybody hears the question. So if I'm not trying to rephrase it to phrase it favorably to me. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody hears it. So, by the way, if I've misconstrued your question, you can tell me that, and I will act accordingly.
When you allow questions, people will tell you their life story and stand up and talk for 30 minutes. How do you stop that?
So the question is, what do you do when somebody is sort of grandstanding and asking a bunch of questions? First of all, the most important thing you need to do is you need to be polite to your listeners. It doesn't matter, if somebody is grandstanding and asking a long question, you should do everything you can to be polite to them and answer the question. But then you can use a little psychology. What's your name? Lindell? Okay. All right, so I would say, let's say it's you, Lindell, and you're asking a question, and you've asked a question, you want to ask another question. So you ask another question. You're kind of hogging the room. So what I'll do is I'll ask you, and I'm polite to you, but then once I've finished asking your question, I feel like, you know what, this is enough for Lindell. I'll go, does anybody else have a question? Okay? Now, it's important because you don't want to embarrass Lindell. Okay? It's important. You don't want to make people feel that you're trashing or hurting somebody's feelings. But you also want to make sure that you're cognizant of everybody in the room. So you have to sort of use a little psychology in that way. But it's important to be polite. Never turn against anybody in the audience. Yes?
I'd like to go back to content for a minute. Yesterday, Barack Obama's talk was absolutely awesome, but I don't think I remember any of the points he made. I remember the rap, and I remember walking away really inspired. On the other hand, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, could probably recite the whole thing. What's the difference in those speeches?
Yeah, I think, I have to be honest here, I think you have to judge political speeches a little differently than standard business speeches. I really think you have to judge political speeches differently. I completely agree. I loved Barack's speech. But you're right. You can't sort of identify a single thing. The overall concept, I think, was, it's time for us to sort of pull ourselves together and get to work. But we couldn't identify a single point. And I think that's really what he was sort of generally trying to do. But you're right. And I think that's a downfall of a lot of those speeches. And a lot of them, you get really all fired up. And by the way, Barack Obama, if you remember back to the early in the campaign, he was criticized a lot for his speeches being wonderful sounding, but what was the point? Okay? Now, but I will say, Martin Luther King's speeches, he didn't use our three-point plan, but he would use sort of rhetorical devices to get you to remember things. And Barack Obama would use a lot of those things, sort of repeating a phrase over and over again, but he didn't use it as much yesterday. And actually yesterday's speech was kind of criticized a little bit. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was criticized because it wasn't as good as a lot of his really, really great speeches. Barack Obama is best. Go back and look him up on YouTube and look up his speech on going to Greenwood, South Carolina. Look about the story about going to Greenwood, South Carolina. It's one of his best speeches. He tells a wonderful story about his campaign.
We have time for one more question.
Yes, sir.
So this one time I read an article which was titled "How Donald Trump Handles Criticism," and he said
how Donald Trump handles criticism.
Yeah, that's right.
Good.
So according to him, if somebody criticizes you when you're giving a talk, you just agree with him and then you politely move, and just like how you did, you say, "Okay, does anyone else have a question?" So what do you think of that? Would you rather challenge a person and go ahead and start an argument, or would you just agree with him in his criticism?
I think it depends on the size of the audience. Okay, if it's a small audience, where it's a really small group, I think it's great to engage and have a discussion. If it's a really large audience, you have to be careful because you have a lot more people who can't really get involved in it. But if it's a small group, then you can sort of engage it into a discussion. If somebody is saying they disagree with a point of mine, and we're in a small workshop setting, I love that. I love when they do that, and then we have a discussion about it, and we sort of see where we end up. That's fine. But you want to make sure that you really connect with people. One final story before we leave. One final story. At the beginning of every football season, Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the great Green Bay Packers, would gather all of his players into a room. The first meeting of the year, Coach Lombardi would gather them all into his room, and the first words out of his mouth, the first thing he would say to them, they hadn't been together all summer. First words were, he'd walk in with a football in his hands. He'd say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." Now, why would he say that? He would say that because Coach Lombardi believed that to be great, you had to be great at executing fundamentals. And so that's what they would start. Most fundamental of all, this is football. Okay? And then the linebackers would relearn how to tackle. The linemen would relearn how to block. The quarterbacks would relearn how to pass the ball as if they'd never learned before. They were relearning the fundamentals. Now, what I've been speaking about today are the fundamentals of great communication and speaking in a way that moves and leads people. Number one, organize your ideas into 3 listener-centered points and a corollary to that, and tell some stories. Number 2, present in a style that connects. How you look and how you sound matters. And the third, and I think maybe most important fundamental of all, because it enables the other ones, is you want to practice like crazy. Use these ideas, practice them, and you're going to be great communicators and people that move people. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
I have something for you.
Okay, great.